hit like, and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel.
Peace, family. This is your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Office Hours every night, or every week, I should say, here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. We hold office hours where we break down some of the most important issues, some of those controversial subjects, some of the most contested topics in the world today. But unlike in the normal circumstances, where we do a short but efficient analysis here at Office Hours, you get time to really break these issues down in a deeper and more sophisticated fashion. And we get to do it not just with me. How unfun is that? Instead, we get to do it with some of the deepest thinkers, some of those controversial thinkers and minds and voices, some of those provocative writers and speakers in the world. And tonight is no different. We have, fortunately, one of the most amazing, I think, minds of our generation, a brilliant legal mind, a skilled cultural commentator, and a courageous voice at a moment where we need it the most. He's the author of a wonderful new book. It's called Bad Law, 10 Popular Laws That Are Ruining America. He's a friend to Night School and Office Hours. I'm so excited to see him. I'm so proud of you for this book, my brother. I can't wait to talk to you about it. Elie Mystal is here in the building. Hello, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. Fun to be up and talking about things on a Sunday night, which I don't often get to do. So cheers to that.
Oh, man. It's a good thing. You know, it's a very interesting group of people that decide to hang out at 10 o'clock at night and talk about stuff.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. And it's a cool bunch, man. I want to talk about the book, but I gotta say, I have been hearing your name spoken so much in the last week. I've literally gotten phone calls and texts several times this week asking if I knew you, and I was very proud to say I did. But also people bragging about how sort of vocal you've been on the critiques of Trump, and specifically using the language of fascism. I know people have book rollouts, but I also know that you're principled and care about this stuff anyway. What's the timing like here for you to be talking about fascism and Trump at this moment?
I think that when they started pulling people off the street, the artifice had to end, right? Like the pretend democracy that we live in, we're like, oh, there's a rule of law and there are things that matter and due process. They're pulling people off the street for writing newspaper articles. There's a word for that. That word is fascism. And I don't give a damn what anybody else wants to call it. Like, I think people at this point are just trying to fool themselves into thinking that we live in something approaching a normal Western democracy. We don't. We live at the whims of one man. Yeah. Maybe two, because there's Trump and the co.
One of the possible, right?
One or two men, right, who can decide on a whim who gets to have rights and who doesn't get to have rights. You know, having documentations, having papers, that means nothing to these people. Exercising your First Amendment rights, that means nothing to these people. Due process, that means nothing to this people. So I don't know what other people want to call it. I call that fascism.
I think you're absolutely right. How foreseeable was this? You know, I get it. Trump is Trump in all the ways. There are people who I think believe, or believed, at least told themselves, I'll say that this time would either be different or that it would be no worse than the last time, that we'd seen the worst excesses of a Trump presidency, that this couldn't get any worse than what we saw when he left office in 2020. How foreseeable was it that we'd see him go even further in terms of repression of free speech, further in terms of deportations, further in terms of even how he's articulating a foreign policy agenda? Was that foreseeable?
Entirely. I foreseed it, right? I foresaw it. Many people foresaw it. Many people spent the last year screaming about what he was going to do. I started talking about this back right after January 6th. right? When Merrick Garland refused to take the hammer to him and prosecuted him, I said, look, when you let people who attempt to coup get away with it, you know what they're going to do? They're going to come back for more. If there's no accountability, there was just going to be more of it. I talked again during the campaign about how we have to understand his first term as his test run, kind of the Raptors in Jurassic Park testing the fences to see where they were weak. If we shut the power down and let him get him back in office, I said that he was going to break through those fences and those alleged guardrails. I think the thing that I didn't foresee was Elon Musk's influence and how kind of worse it would be when the richest man in the world puts his billions and his idiocy behind the fascist dictator. I didn't fully see that that unholy merging between the two of them. But in terms of what Trump was going to do and how he was going to do it, that was entirely foreseeable. And it's why I spent every kind of ounce of energy in my body trying to convince people to vote against the man during the summer. It didn't work. People didn't listen. People didn't believe it. People thought, as you said, they had seen the worst. People thought that they could survive it again. And the thing is, Mark, most people will. All people are going to survive this. Fascism never affects everybody. That's the entire point, right? And you can go back to Nazi Germany, right? There were lots of free Germans walking around still enjoying their rights. We call them Nazis now, but at the time, they didn't think they were in a fascist government, right? They thought that it was just happening to bad people. It was just happening to the worst people. Fascism always has an in-group that is protected and an out-group that you can allegedly do the very worst human rights violations to. And that's how fascism works, because most people feel like, well, it ain't going to happen to me. Why should I care? The overall fascism feeds, if you look at like its true energy, its true fuel, it's lack of empathy. The fuel that fascism feeds is a lack of empathy and a lack of caring for other people. Everybody's been quoting that first they came for.
Yeah.
It was a poem before it was a meme, guys, right? Everybody's been quoting that poem, right? But I don't know that a lot of people have thought through what that poem is really trying to say, right? They're pointing out that our lack of empathy for when it happens to other people is how fascism succeeds. And that's exactly what's happening right now. First, he went after undocumented immigrants. Documented immigrants were like, oh, it's not going to happen to me. Now he's going after documented immigrants, people who are not immigrants are like, oh, it's not going to happen to me. Soon he'll be going after birthright citizens. People who are white and birthright citizens are going to be like, oh, it's not going to happen to me. Right? That's how this all works, and that's exactly what we're seeing now. And that's why I've been, anytime I get in front of a microphone with my hair on fire, just trying to get people first to care about somebody else, and then to translate that care into action.
Earlier today, I was in a Uber very early in the morning. My tire blew out on the highway, and I ended up needing to get an emergency ride. And this wonderful Ghanaian driver followed me from the shoulder of the road and got me to the side, helped me move the baby seat. I had my 3-year-old with me, and got me to safety, got me home. And as we were talking, he knew me from the media. And he was telling me how important it was to criticize Trump, how important it was to sort of talk about how awful Trump has been to the economy. He talked about how much money he lost. This was his like second or third house, so he had some other things going on. He talked about how much money he lost and how the tariff arrangements are going to make things even worse for him in his life. He talked about family members being under threat. He went through the whole bit. And I don't know why, but I said to him, I got to ask, who'd you vote for? He said, she just wasn't ready. And I said, how's that working out for you? And he said, I am regretting it every day. I'm not here to make the case that people should have voted for Kamala or not. I'm a Green Party member. I understand people have different positions on this. What I don't understand is how someone could, with a straight face and a sober mind, pull the lever for Trump. There's a way, though, that I do get the mindset of certain people. There's sexism, there's misogyny, right? There's all that stuff, right? There's the legitimate. I'm stipulating that there's legitimate political reasons not to vote for Kamala Harris, but I'm saying that wasn't his point. There's a way that Trump speaks to these people, and back to your point about fascism. They're coming to get you. They're coming to take your money. They're coming to stop. Only I can save you from those elitists who are going to stop us average Joes from winning. Trump's ostensibly a billionaire. He's not an average Joe. How is he able to speak to the poor, to the disadvantaged, to the people who feel like somebody's coming for their jobs? How is he able to resonate with them in a way that I've seen few leaders do of his sort? What's he doing? How does that cab driver somehow see the world on fire and vote for the guy with the gasoline can?
Well, I got two answers to this, and that kind of pulls me in two different directions, and truth might be somewhere in the middle. But I think I'm of two minds of this. The first mind, and the more kind of intellectual part of my brain, basically refuses to give him the credit that you're suggesting that he gives, because what I see in that first part of my brain is that this is what white folks have always done. This is what white supremacy has always treaded on, the idea that your life can be crap, but as long as your life is better than somebody else's life, you're coming out ahead. The zero-sum gameness. I mean, I go back to the fact that, as white folks used to love to tell me in school, that lots of the Southerners who vote for the Confederacy never held slaves. And I was like, yeah, how messed the F up is that?
Right.
Y'all out here fighting and dying in one of the most brutal world wars ever in world history, and you don't even aren't even part of the system.
Right.
What is that? How did your brain get so infected to do that? And the reason is that white Confederates were willing to give up their own best self-interest to still feel better than the black man. Right. And so, like, that is what Trump is doing, is a story that has been told time and time again in this country and across the world. As long as you can feel better than somebody else, that is enough for you to vote against your own self-interest. That's why I kind of started with empathy, our lack of empathy being the true moral deficit in this country. Right. So that's the intellectual part of the brain. The less intellectual, more kind of real world answer that I have is that Trump actually does have a somewhat unique power, if not globally, historically, certainly in modern American politics. And to me, I try to understand with particularity how he's talking to men, how he's talking to disaffected men, how he's talking to, in lots of cases, mediocre men. And he tells men that everything that is wrong in their lives, every ambition that has been foiled, every failure that they've encountered can be blamed on somebody else, can be blamed on either somebody or some force else. And it's not just like, it's not as simple or as linear as like, it's the bitches who did that. Like, it's not that exactly, right? But it's the feminization of America is like a more kind of broader thing that he puts it, and he gives that as a reason for men to be disaffected. And so he speaks in a very, I think the intellectual term is toxic. He speaks with a very with a voice that really resonates with a certain kind of man, and we haven't we haven't gotten over that. We're not close to getting over that. I think my camera just went out.
No worries. Let's see if we can.
That is so weird. It's been happening. I apologize.
No, it's all good, man. We'll get you back up in a second. It's probably Trump and them trying to stop you, trying to shut you down.
Yeah, but just to roll off that point, the way that he speaks to a certain kind of man has proven to be very effective, and it's not something that the Democrats have had an acceptable answer for yet. It's not something that liberals or Democrats or people like me have been able to figure out how to counteract.
It's and I'm not sure what it will look like when we're able to do that, or what I'm thinking that the economy tanking and all sorts of things may force people to reflect and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe this thing actually isn't working the way we thought it would. Maybe this thing actually sucks. Maybe maybe we don't know what we're doing here. Maybe we need to reconsider our votes. I think that might be a possibility. It may take rock bottom, but I think we're quickly headed toward that rock bottom. Is I guess my point. But I want to talk about this new book you have, because it's super interesting. I'm always fascinated when people encourage us to kind of reflect upon some of the most taken for granted parts of our society, some of the most taken for granted parts of human life. And one of those things is the government. Another one of those things is the law itself. And so when I see you talking about 10 popular laws that are ruining America, I say good. That's a great place to start. One of the things in the book that I thought was super interesting was this conversation about illegals. Mm-hmm. Tell us why you decided to take that on, but also sort of what's problematic about illegal, even as an idea. Not even the determination of who's illegal and who's not, but the very category itself is what you're helping to unpack and ultimately dismantle. This idea that a person is illegal. Break that down for me.
Yeah, your existence in a place is not illegal. That's my starting premise, right? Like, there is no such thing as an illegal human. That's not how humanity works. You are where you are, right? Like, that is, and that cannot be a crime. So what I did is I looked at
tell me why. I'm going to push you on that. Tell me why we should accept that as a premise. Because if I were to say that while sitting on your couch uninvited, right, you would say, well, no, there's certain, it's not my existence that's illegal, but rather it's a particular presence I have in a particular place that I'm not allowed to be vis-a-vis the rest of the kind of social contracts we make. I can't sit in your house without permission. I can't walk in your door without permission. And so I am not an illegal human, but I'm a human committing an illegal act. And it would be no different than me traversing a border.
But what's the illegal act there? The illegal act in that situation would be trespass. You arguably broke into my house, right? And that would be the illegal thing that I was getting you. I wouldn't be your existence. It's not what's illegal. It's your action that is illegal, right?
Precisely.
So when we talk about illegal immigrants, we're calling a group of people illegal without actually looking at their actions, without having an assessment on what their actions were or weren't, the criminality of their actions, the danger of their actions. We're not asking those otherwise normal legal questions. We're just saying the whole group of people is illegal, right? So just even to use your couch analogy, right? If you break into my house, well, now you've committed an illegal breaking and entering, right? Yeah. But if you came into my house to, let's say, fix my plumbing, right? And you wanted to sit down in the middle of your work that I am paying you to do, and you sat on my couch, at that point, are you illegally in my house? I didn't say you could sit on the couch.
Right.
I said you could fix the plumbing. I could say that. We have a word for people who say that. We call them assholes. Right? Like that. That's what that word is, right? Could I call the cops if I invited you in my house to fix my plumbing and you sat on the couch for half an hour during your shift, an hour during your shift? At what point do you have to not complete the work that I asked you to do before you become a criminal in my in my domicile, right? Again, these are all legal questions that we have a whole
but why wouldn't circumventing or undermining the immigration system be the same thing? Again, in the same way I'd be in your house illegally because you didn't invite me in. Why would that be no different than someone sneaking across a border or sneaking into a border?
Well, because we have a difference between civil penalties and criminal penalties, right? We have a certain idea that some things are illegal, are wrong, or people shouldn't do, but the punishment for doing that is basically civil. It's you have a fine, you pay some money, what have you, right? Then we have a whole different category of things that we call criminal penalties that we usually reserve for people who have done something not just wrong, not just against some kind of form, but have actually cause harm or could potentially cause harm, right? And so if
Yeah.
we're gonna take a person out of a civil penalty of, let's say, illegal entry into the country, illegal trespass in the country, you came when nobody invited you. If we're going to say that that is actually something that should be illegal, the jump from that should be illegal as a civil matter to that should be the kind of thing that gets you thrown in jail without any showing of whether or not you're a danger of committed any dangerous action. That is where I say that's a bridge too far, right? And
But,
so
but
my book, so
I'm sorry, just for clarity's sake, because I do not. I'm asking purely to understand.
Mhm.
At the current moment, are these things civil penalties or are they criminal penalties to break?
well, this is why I wrote the book, and this is why I wrote the chapter that we're talking about, right? Because what I tried to do is really hone in on what makes an immigration offense criminal, right? Like, what's the actual function of law that turns us from a civil penalty to a criminal penalty? Most people don't know that actually the situation that you're actually talking about, the initial trespass across the border, we do not treat that as a criminal penalty. Illegal entry in the first instance is a civil penalty. You are deported. That's actually a civil offense, right? You're kicked out of the country. You don't go to jail. You don't become a criminal illegal immigrant until you do what's called illegal re-entry, right? So you came, you were kicked out, you came again. Okay, now that's a crime, right? Now, it's possible that there are people who think, well, we told you once and you just didn't listen to us, so now we got to throw you in jail for 10 years. For 10 years because they came back. That's what should trigger a criminal offense with jail time and all of the horrors that we know about jail time, plus being essentially separated from your family and children. That because they came back. All right. Well, if you want to take that classic case, I would disagree with it, but some people wouldn't. But remember that classic case that Republicans always talk about: you came, you got kicked out, you come again, now you're a criminal. That's not actually most illegal reentry cases, because
what are most?
Most are people who overstay their visa. So they came, they entered legally, but they stayed longer than they should have, than they legally should have. But now that crime, that failure to leave is thought of as illegal re-entry into the country. And so you can be criminalized. So you can be thrown in jail. People who submit an application, an immigration application, and get denied, but come anyway, are now thought to be illegally re-entering. The illegal entry was your application. The illegal re-entry is when you try to come anyway, right? So in that classic case of somebody submits their form and starts walking north, right? They submit their form, they start walking north, they figure by the time they get to the border, either their application would have been accepted, which would be great, or even if their application is denied, they'll have an opportunity to talk to a human, to press their case and get a little bit of that milk of human kindness. As many of us think that a lot of us think that we can argue for ourselves better than we can argue on paper, right? But it's when they come having submitted the form and they get stopped at the border or they sneak across the border, bam, that's illegal reentry. That's a criminal penalty, minimum 10 years in prison, and can be separated from your family.
I was going to say, and the second piece of that is the family separation. Of course, Jacob Soboroff wrote a wonderful book on separation that sort of dovetails on what you're arguing right now. Important points. Talk to me about the Second Amendment.
I will, but I just want, before we get off of that, because the other thing that I do in the book is that I look at, and I do this for all the laws that I talk about in the book, I look at why they passed it and what they said when they were passing the law, right? Yeah. And this specific statute, the specific illegal reentry statute that criminalizes illegal reentry, that language has remained unchanged since 1921. And in 1921, when they passed it on the strength of science submitted by the then foremost American eugenicist.
Yes.
Who said that the illegal reentry statute was needed to prevent the mongrelization of the white race by the inferior races. That geneticist then went to Nazi Germany and did their eugenics program. We exported eugenics to Germany, not the other way around. All right. So when we talk about this particular criminal statute, understand we are talking about a literal 1921 Nazi law. And I argue that can't be right. That can't still be how we do this immigration thing.
You're arguing that our immigration policy should not be informed by early 20th century Nazi law.
Just a thought, Mark. Just a thought.
Fair enough.
We maybe have evolved to a point where we can do a little bit better than that.
Spicy take there. Spicy take, sir. Talk to me about the Second Amendment. There's a few moments in the book where you sort of take on the Second Amendment, including an interlude, where you make a case that's somewhat unambiguous by raising the question, why is the Second Amendment so violent and stupid? But beyond just the Second Amendment, you ask the question about protecting arms dealers in the third chapter of the book, or fourth chapter of the book, fifth chapter of the book, excuse me. You seem to have an issue with the gun, sir.
I have an issue with the gun so much as I have an issue with children being shot to death. Right?
Another spicy take.
Right. That's my big spicy hot take. Right. that children being shot to death is bad, and we should do everything that we can to prevent it. Right. So in my first book, Allow Me to Retort, I argued that the Second Amendment has been wrongly interpreted by conservatives on the Supreme Court, that the right to bear arms having metastasized into a right to bear arms for self-defense, that was an error. That's not how the amendment is written. That is not how we should understand this particular right. In this book, Bad Law, I argue that if you think the conservative interpretation is right, if you think that the conservatives are accurately in imposing and interpreting the Second Amendment in our modern day system, then clearly the Second Amendment has to be repealed. Because clearly a murder-suicide amendment right into the middle of our Constitution is a terrible thing. If you're telling me that your interpretation of this amendment means that I cannot take guns away, I cannot take high-capacity ammunition away, I cannot take assault rifles away, I cannot take guns away from the people who want to do our children harm. If you're telling me that that interpretation is correct, then I'm going to tell you that amendment has to be thrown out, burned, and weighted to the bottom of the ocean. Because that amendment, then, your interpretation of it at least, is freaking stupid.
What does an effective, reasonable gun policy look like in the modern United States?
It's interesting. I think that I like to take my cues from what they do in the rest of the world, right? And in the rest of the world, the rest of the sane world, people have guns if they can prove that they need them, right? So there are certain categories of people, not just the military, but, security guards and what have you, that can show a real need to have a weapon, right? And those people are able to get weapons. Other places do not have a no guns allowed ever for anybody policy. They generally have policies where if you submit the right forms and go through the right training and do this, that, and the other thing, and you can show a really good reason to have a firearm, then you can have a firearm. These countries, for the most part, don't think that there's any time that there's a good reason to have 100 ammunition drum barrel. They don't think there's ever a good reason for that. They don't think there's ever a good reason for you to have a bump stock, which turns a semi-automatic rifle into an automatic rifle by using the...
You're muted there, brother. Yep. Still muted. We can't hear you. Nope. No, let me see if I can. Let me try to remove you off stage and bring you right back. It could, because it went out abruptly. Let me see if I can take you off stage and bring you back. Maybe it's a. Try it now. No. Okay. I love talking to this brother because he has not just good ideas, but his mind works really quickly and really sharply. And so he's able to not just sort of defend what he's written on the page, but take it a step further and answer actually interesting questions. He's not a robot. He's an actual thoughtful, brilliant, really analyst. Anyway, I think we can hear him again now. Let's see. You there? No, my God, no, I can't hear you. I don't know what's going on. Let me Nothing. Did a cord come out maybe, or because it stopped abruptly? Let me see something. Try unmuting yourself now.
How's that?
Yep, gotcha.
All right.
There we go.
See, it's the Sunday night, man. It's the
Exactly.
technology is tired. It's like, what? I thought we were playing Fortnite. What's going on? Anyway, so I was just saying that the other countries find that there usually isn't a reason to have an assault rifle, to have a 100-drum ammunition barrel, to have a cop killer bullet. Like, you can make an argument to a government in another country about why you might need a handgun in your situation, or why you might need a rifle. You live out in the, I have a friend who lives in Florida, like in the Everglades, in the swamp, right? And the first time I visited him at his house, because I met him in college, it was a long time before I actually, went down to Florida to visit him. And all of a sudden I was like, you got a shotgun, right? Because like
we're gonna need one.
we far away. So you can make an argument for why you in your particular situation need a gun, but this idea, this Second Amendment addled idea that anybody can have a gun for any type of gun for any reason, or else it offends the great and powerful Second Amendment. Again, that's just dumb. We don't need to live like that. And if we didn't live like that, fewer people would die from gun violence and fewer children would die from gun violence. Simple as that. People are like, oh, well, the criminals aren't going to follow the laws. Man, we make all sorts of laws that the criminals don't follow. That doesn't mean that's not a good law. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have that law, right? The criminals will not drive at the speed limit. Sure. Okay, fine. But most people will. And fewer people will die because of it, is the argument.
The challenge, of course, is your opponents will say, unlike a speed limit where me driving faster doesn't have any material impact on the other person's driving or driving slower, right? It's some people are going to violate speed limits, but we should still have them because they make everyone safer, sure. But the idea, of course, is that me having a gun will disarm someone else or motivate them not to use their weapon, or give the quote unquote good guy a chance to be the bad guy, right? That the good guy with the gun is what the gun lobby argues. A good guy with the gun should be allowed to beat the bad guy with the gun. What say you?
I saw a lot of good guys with guns in Uvalde, and last I saw, they were still pissing their pants, not doing any good guy things, right? No, the opportunity to die in a crossfire is not better, does not make it sensible, right? Like it's an argument based on a situation that almost never happens. And I understand the fear. Look, I have a wife and 2 kids. Home invasion is a fear. Like, it's the thing that you hear a bump in the night and it wakes you up and you're like, oh my God, I hope they're not coming, right? Like, I understand the fear. But
I reach for my gun.
What?
And I reach for my gun at that moment.
I do not, because I am not armed, because I have kids. And it's dumb for me to be armed. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm like the T-3000. I've got stabbing weapons and blunt force objects all throughout the damn house, right? Like, I've got things that I would pick up and use in a life or death situation, but a gun is simply not one of them. The chances of me keeping a gun in a safe enough place where neither of my 2 young boys could get at it, reach it, or have any chance of shooting each other with it, but I could somehow reach it in a life or death immediate situation, those are so small. And it's statistically speaking much more likely that if I put myself in that situation, my kids would be more likely to be shot than any kind of intruder. This ain't nothing of the fact that I've lived in this house for like 10 years and I have a really good security system and a dog. I've never been home invaded, right? So like, just I get the fear. The fear is real. It's not, you don't make an entire policy around fear, especially when you have empirical evidence for how terrible that policy is and the cost in human life. And again, the blood of our literal children that we are paying for our own fear. Buy a nightlight. You'll feel better than you will if we have a society where everybody is armed to the teeth like we're in a Snake Plissken movie.
You talked about firefights and sort of the potential dangers that could happen. That makes me think about the 6th chapter of your book. How can you murder someone if you didn't kill anybody? because I'm thinking, well, anyway, you know what I'm thinking. So talk to me about that law and why that is the case.
So the law is called felony murder. It's a principle that exists in every state, right? And almost every state. The idea that if you are committing a felony and somebody dies, you can be charged with murder, with not manslaughter. You can be charged with straight up murder called felony murder because somebody died while you were committing a felony, right? And so the classic kind of thing that people think of is like a carjacking scenario where like you and your boy jack a car and your boy kills the driver as you guys speed off. You were both jacking the car. You weren't the trigger man, but your boy was. You're both liable for murder. The thing is that we already have laws that cover accomplice murder and aiding abetting, right? So if I am literally an accomplice to the murder and you can show that I had, I'm the wheel man in a drive-by shooting, you can charge the trigger man and you can charge me, right? If I shot Ricky, if the trigger man shoots Ricky, you can charge me too, right? That's called an accomplice to murder. We also have laws that handle if you aid and abet a murder after it's happened, right? So like we're covered on that situation.
But let me give you another example of where this could kick in, where someone would say is a more, because I think even your biggest critics would say, sure, maybe the felony murder statute is too broadly applied. Sure. But what happens when you're robbing the bank and you pull out the gun, or you're shooting at somebody and like say and you miss and the person shoots back in self-defense? Let's say a police officer, right? We've seen this happen. To the audience, I think I'm just pulling out random examples. I mean, we've seen cases where someone is attempting to commit some sort of crime. They shoot at the police. The police return fire. They don't hit the police, but when the police return fire, they miss the assailant and end up hitting an innocent person. That person dies. The argument is the police, that person is dead because you shot at the police. Your actions and your criminal actions directly led to a defensible and legal police response that ended up killing somebody. Therefore, someone's got to be charged with murder. That's the argument they make. Tell me why in that case, cases like that, we shouldn't have a statute that makes them a person liable for murder.
Yeah, because I'm not a cop lawyer, because I don't think that that's a defensible and acceptable police response to shoot into an open area where you can hit innocent bystanders. The police shouldn't have shot in that situation. And while I might
say it's not a police officer, say someone broke in my house. I know you don't like guns in the house, but say someone breaks in my house and I fire right at the burglar who's trying to attack me. I miss and I hit somebody and they die. Now, should just no one be charged with murder, or should the person who broke into the house be criminally liable for the end result of someone dying?
No, you shouldn't be charged. Okay, so let me get your situation right. Somebody and an accomplice break into your house, right? So it's two people.
Not necessarily, right? I could miss and hit my butler, All
right, so somebody's broken into your house, threatened you with deadly force, and you fire back at the person
in self-defense
with deadly force, as you're allowed to do in that situation.
Yes.
Right? You miss the person that you're shooting for, and you kill your butler. Right? The criminal eventually is apprehended for breaking and entry, robbery, all that stuff. Right. But now you want to charge him with murder for a shot he didn't take because he made you take the shot.
Me personally, no. The argument is that your criminal actions led to this person's death.
Right. And I would argue that that's unjust. I would argue that is straight up unjust. You charge the person for the crime they committed. Their crime was breaking and entering and armed robbery. Trust me, that person's going to jail for a long time. You don't charge the person with the crime they didn't commit or didn't have any intention to commit. They didn't intend for you to shoot wildly and hit the butler. And while the butler's death is tragic and it's not on you, the homeowner, it's not like you can whip it around and charge the homeowner with murder. That would also be unjust. You shouldn't charge people for crimes they didn't commit and didn't intend to commit. Now, there are edge cases.
The intent to commit, I might push back. They intended to use deadly force against me. So they intended for someone to die, just not the butler.
Sure. So you can charge them with attempted murder then. You can charge them for attempted murder for attempting to shoot you. You can charge them for attempted murder of the butler if you want to argue that their shots were so wild they could have hit anybody. But if they didn't shoot the butler, if you didn't shoot the sheriff, if you shot the deputy and you didn't shoot the sheriff, you can't go to jail for shooting the sheriff.
Get charged for the deputy.
Right? Charge you for the deputy. Don't charge me for the sheriff. I didn't shoot him. Right? Like that. And it's such a kind of core principle of criminal justice that this rule, this felony murder rule that we still have, has been outlawed. And again, I never say anything, Mark, that nobody else has thought of before, right? The felony murder rule has been excised from the legal codes of every country that used to have it. England, France, Ireland, Scotland. Canada ruled it unconstitutional in the Canadian Constitution in 1992. We are literally the only common law country left that has this idea that you should charge people for a murder they didn't actually do. And there are tons of, so now that we've talked about the few edge cases where maybe you would feel some reason to charge a person with felony murder, and I'm still saying you shouldn't, think about the more reasonable cases, the more likely cases, the more often cases where a person gets charged for felony murder because they tried to run away. They didn't threaten the cops with any kind of physical force or deadly force. The cop knocked on their door, maybe they didn't knock at all to serve a warrant. The guy tries to get out, tries to run away. The cop idiotically opens fire on their entire family, kills their spouse, kills their children, and the person who's tried to run away gets charged with the murder, the felony murder of their own family member.
Look what you made me do is the kind of state's argument. And I, for the audience out there, as an abolitionist, I don't support any of this. And I've certainly been fighting against the felony murder rule for a long time, but I do like to do the intellectual exercise of pushing this. I mean, but one of the things that, we fought my entire activist life to get the Move 9 freed in Philadelphia. There was many people know about the Move bombing of 1985. But the first Move interaction with police was in 1978 in Powelton Village, and 9 members of the Move organization were ultimately charged and arrested. They were allegedly committing a felony by virtue of what they were doing in the house. And even the 9 women, even the women in the basement who were literally in the basement protecting babies and covering those babies, by virtue of being in the house against the state's will and against the police's argument, they were committing a felony. And so when someone died in the standoff between the two, they were also charged and sentenced to life in prison, or 30 to life in prison. Almost many of them died in prison. Some just got out in the last 5 years. And the police don't even argue that they committed an act of aggression. They don't even argue that they left the basement where they were protecting the babies. But you were in the house, you were committing a crime, someone died, therefore you're look what you made us do.
One of the reasons why I rail so hard against felony murder is that's one of the most sexist laws that we have. Most women who are in jail for murder are in jail for felony murder. They didn't actually kill anybody. They were there when their partner, often an abusive partner, committed a very serious crime. You can argue that if you're the wheel woman in a situation where your partner goes in to rob a bank or rob a store and that partner kills somebody and you're driving the car away, you shouldn't be charged with murder for what is essentially a survival act. Because what would your partner have done to you if you hadn't been willing to take the wheel and drive away from the scene of that crime, right? So again, you can charge the woman as an accomplice to the robbery, even with that logic, right? But you should charge people for what they actually do, not what somebody else does while they're just around. That is the key problem with felony murder, is that it takes us away from charging people for their actual crime. But this, Mark, I mean, if you really, I mean, we're late, so let's go, brother. This is also why I'm against hate crimes. I'm generally against hate crimes legislation for the same reason, right?
I think we may actually be simpatico on this one. Tell me why.
You should charge somebody for what they do, not what they're thinking about while they're doing it. Charge them for what. If somebody shoots me because they hate my hair, or they shoot me because they hate my skin color, or they shoot me because they hate my wallet, either way, I got shot. I want them to go to jail. I want them to go to jail for the crime of shooting me. I don't care what's in their head when they were doing it. I don't care about how they thought about the situation they were in. I care about what they did there and what they intended to do. They intended to shoot me. That is enough. And I shouldn't have to go to court and try to prove and try to beg, oh no, he was super racist when he did it. Yeah, maybe. I don't actually care. What I care about is charging people for what they actually did.
I generally, at the philosophical level and even at the level of logic, pure logic, I agree with you. Invoking a particular type of context may complicate that logic and even the philosophical position we take. I ultimately land where you land. But I do understand why people say that as a matter of public policy, we want to produce certain types of outcomes that will dissuade certain kinds of actions in light of history. So, for example, Black people keep getting lynched. So, yeah, so intensifying the crime or the penalty for the crime is necessary because of how disposable Black lives have been. Or, again, I'm an abolitionist. I'm not arguing for more policing, but most people believe in police, and they believe that police keep us safer. And they believe the police have the hardest and the toughest and the most dangerous jobs. If you operate from that presumption, though, then it's not unreasonable to say that we need to make the penalty for shooting a cop greater because we want to live in a world where that is the most unthinkable act. Because if it is not, and people are not extremely dissuaded from attacking police, then we have bedlam and no safety and no mechanism for safety. Because who the hell would sign up to do that? Who the hell would sign up to police criminals if the criminals can just kill us, right? I at least understand where people are coming from with those arguments.
I understand the argument. My kind of, to push me on hate crimes, though, you have to take to me, murder is not the right way to looking at it. Like, to me, murder should already be punished as much as we can punish a person, right? And I think for the most part, the problem with our murder laws is not that we don't have an intense enough penalty for murder, it's that we don't charge white people for murder when they murder us, right? If we could just get to the point where we were actually charging the white folks for the murders they commit against us, that's my goal, right? Let's just get to the point where we actually charge these cops and charge these white folks who are murdering us. If we could get there, I promise you that would be enough. I promise you the actual charges that we already have on the books for murder would be enough if these cops were actually afraid of ever being charged and convicted for it, right? So, like, on that stick, like, I don't see how enhancing the punishment helps us when we can't even get through the charges. We can't. That's not the actual problem.
Exactly.
Right? It's a first world problem at that point. If you're talking about like enhancing the penalties there, the closer to me edge case on hate crimes is when you have a crime that really wouldn't be serious but for its racial implications. So, like, if you vandalize my property, that's a certain penalty, right? If you vandalize my property by calling me the N-word all over my property, should that be a more heightened punishment
than
just mere vandalism of my property, right? So, like, Elie, fat dude, like, one penalty. Elie, dumb nigger, like, different penalty. That's where I have a little bit more trouble with my stance, right?
Where do you land? How do you resolve that tension? Because it's a great example.
It's real tension, man. It's real tension. I choose intellectual consistency on that one.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna lie. Like, to me, it's at
least compelling if it's not
that's
persuasive.
The closer case for me.
That's fair.
Like, I would want there to be, if you could get rid of hate crimes laws everywhere for everything, that would be the one that I'd be like, oh, okay, it's greater good probably, but man, I would love to keep some version of it that takes truly low level incidental crimes to at least a higher level if you do it for kind of clear racialized intention. But even in that example,
I think you can hold your consistency there and say that the racialized intention or certain types of racialized vandalism, for example, are actually more harmful. That's a more intense form of violence.
And it's also like it's easier for me to prove, right? It's like I don't have like when one of the classic problems with hate crimes laws as they're currently written is that I have to prove in a kind of case of a murder or assault that you were doing it because of your racism, not just because you're a jerk, right? In the vandalism case, it's usually a lot easier to prove what you were doing it for, right? And so it gets me out
maybe, right? Unless you say the jerk is trying to get a rise out of you because by writing something. I mean, I think you end up in the same zone of you're still trying to decide why a person did something, not what they did, but why they did it. And I think that's always going to be tricky and difficult.
Yeah, but it's a little bit easier when they actually say the word or write the word, right?
Yeah. It's certainly more. It certainly makes a more compelling argument as well. I like the consistency. I like how you're thinking. I got to ask you though. Do you think that this is a problem of not having the right laws and not being able to sort of properly either adjust the laws for the contemporary moment or have a more thoughtful, politically nuanced law in place? Is it that? Or is the law itself incapable of producing a certain kind of equity and justice in the world?
Oh, no, the problem is not the law. The problem is white folks. Like the law, one of the foundation principles of the book, I say, like, the law is not an objective thing. The law is a choice, right? Charlton Heston did not climb up on a mountain, find some laws, be like, here, take this, all of you. No, that's not. The law is always a choice. It's a choice about how we choose to live.
But that's my point. Human beings are inherently, for to use the technical term, fucked up. So is it possible to install any kind of legal system that won't always have these contradictions?
Yes, I think it is. I think theoretically, certainly it is. And even on the ground, if you could take some of the racism and some of the sexism and some of the misogyny out of the law, it would be better. It would be better tomorrow, right? Part of the reason that I wrote the book, right, is that it's an action plan. I've been saying that it's like my start of Project 2029. Here are 10 things we could just change tomorrow and things would be better the next day. Like, these are not, they might seem intractable, but it really just requires a little tweak of the language here, a repeal of the language there, and things would improve. Would it get us to some kind of utopia, Valhalla situation? No, it's not gonna. I'm not a utopian. I don't think that's even the goal, right? I'm not a utopian. I'm anti-dystopia. And I feel like we could get out of our current dystopia with some, yes, difficult, but certainly manageable and possible changes to our laws. So yeah, I do think I absolutely think it's possible. I think humans, and again, that's why I keep saying, like, we have problems that the rest of the world has already figured out how to deal with, right? Many of our problems are problems where we do not have to reinvent the wheel. We have to accept that other people's inventions have been a little bit better. On certain issues, other people's inventions have been a little bit better, and we should just adopt them, right? South Africa, I've been getting so much right-wing shit for saying this, but it's objectively true. South Africa has an objectively better constitution than we do. It's better on human rights. It's better on property rights. It's better on economic rights. It's better on voting than what we have. We could just adopt some of the things that South Africa has done, understanding that South Africa, when they were rewriting their constitution after apartheid, adopted some of the good things that we were doing and update our constitution with a little South African injection and make our constitution better tomorrow with a couple of amendments. Again, we don't have to come up with it ourselves. Other people have done it. We just got to have the humility to listen.
Sounds like you hate America.
Oh, you're saying that I hate the country that kidnapped and enslaved my ancestors? And then no, how could I possibly hate that?
Oh, you crazy liberals.
So very good to me. It's always like, I get so pissed off when they're always like, no, if you hate America so much, why don't you just leave? Motherfucker, you first.
Right. Right.
I ain't leaving until they give me my money back. All right. Like, you don't know why you're saying.
Right.
These people owe me a check.
A couple of them. Yeah, no, it's it's so fascinating to hear you talk about these laws in this moment. How do you tie your desire to restructure these laws or restructure the law to being in a moment where Trump is doing that very thing, just not in the ways that you want? Does that make you less hopeful, more hopeful? Where do you land with that?
Oh, and look, he's using power maximally. That's what Republicans always do. They get into office and they use every shred of power they have in order to bring about the future, the horrible dystopian future that they want. All I can hope for is that the Democrats, having seen what happens when the Republicans use their power maximally, that one day, if Democrats are ever allowed to hold power again, and that might not come for a while, that we also use our power maximally. Again, I've been saying this book to me is like my Project 2029. Republicans started writing Project 2025 in 2021 when they lost. And they didn't have the White House and didn't have both chambers of Congress. And they had just attacked the Capitol and failed. And it's in that moment of completely no power that they start writing Project 2025. They start kind of planning what they're going to do if they ever take power again. And we're seeing the horrible effects of that right now. But I ask, where's the Democrats' Project 2029? Right? And so...
Sorry. That was my next question. Like, why don't Democrats do this? Why does it always feel like Democrats are operating like they just got into the game, like they're just learning the sport, or just learning the rules of the game? Like, this isn't new. When you go to 1980s, I mean, so many of these plans, some of these policies, so many of these approaches were done before. When I look at Moms for Liberty, or when I look at these kind of long game approaches to changing public policy, when I look at Project 2020, all that stuff, I'm like, yeah, we saw this in the Reagan era. Yeah, we saw this. I mean, why do Democrats act like they haven't seen this before? Why are they so ill-equipped to respond?
Well, look, the book is called 10 Popular Laws That Are Ruining America. And by popular, what I meant is that the laws that I focused on had broad bipartisan support when they were passed. Mark, when I started doing the research, when I see something bad, I'm kind of like, bring me your Republicans. Show me the mustache twirling evil Republican behind the curtain, right? And sure, there's always a mustache twirling evil Republican behind the curtain. But consistently, as I was doing my research, I saw Democrat after Democrat after Democrat, pretty much every popular Democrat in the past 4 years contributing to some of these laws, helping, getting that law, spearheading, getting it over the line, providing the last votes, right? So again, the book, I kind of focused on laws that both parties at some level supported in real time. And then usually the Democrats kind of belatedly are just like, oh, that was a terrible idea, we're sorry.
Yeah, every law related to mass incarceration, ultimately,
Joe Biden wrote it, Bill Clinton signed it, right? You can just go down, the mass incarceration law that I focus on is the 1984 Armed Career Criminals Act.
Right.
That was sponsored by Ted Kennedy in the Senate, right? So like, so then your question though, your 30,000 foot question though was why, right? I don't have a great answer for that. I think that Democrats have never, it's a little bit like MSNBC. MSNBC never wanted to be the liberal network, never wanted to be a network that focused on Black stories. They always wanted to have what Fox had, just like not as stupid, right? That's the Democrats never wanted to be the Civil Rights Party, never wanted to be the Black Party. They kind of got pushed into that because that was a way for them to win elections. But they've never gotten over those white working class allegedly voters that Reagan took from them in 1980. They're still looking for them.
Right, but they ain't getting back.
Right, they're not doing any of the things policy-wise that would get them back, but they still kind of hope that they would want them back, right? They're not comfortable with being a party that is led by women, that is led by Black folks and brown folks. They don't want that. So I think that's one of the big reasons. I think the other big reason why Democrats don't always seem to have the dog in the fight the way that Republicans do is that Democrats are fundamentally institutionalist, right? They believe in it's funny because conservatives kind of definition, like the definition of the word is supposed to be traditionalist, right? But our modern day conservatives are anything but traditionalists. The Democratic Party has taken up the mantle of institutionalism and traditionalism. And it's a dumbass mantle. Like it's a mantle nobody wants except for like a couple of like 80-year-old guys in the Senate. And I think their fundamental institutionalism and incrementalism also like really holds the party back in a moment where people are demanding and crying out for change. That's one of the other reasons of Trump's appeal, right? It's toxic and it's awful and it's fascist, but boy, it's different. And there are people who want just different, and Democrats are never offering different. We're too often offering the same, right? It's one of the, again, I did not write another Orange Man Bad book because Orange Man Bad is baked into the system. I think he's very, very bad, but people don't care. Trump, I've been saying this ever since the election because I think Democrats who don't get this are like not equipped to fight the next battle. This man spent the last week of his campaign driving around in a garbage truck, analogizing himself to literal garbage. And his garbage supporters were like, it's so good. It's a good one, Trump. Good one, Trump. And I'm like, dude, you can't, we're done here, right? We're the idea that exposing this man as a fascist, as a garbage man, as a whatever, nobody cares. That's already baked in. So Democrats are going to have to offer something that is better than garbage, not simply pointing out the garbage on the other side.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic that they have the ability to do the self-reflection necessary to realize that they are garbage. And it's not enough to say, yeah, but they stink worse. That's just not going to get the job done. But that's another story for another time. I'm just excited about this book. I'm excited for people to read it. I'm a book nerd, so everybody, it's not only a good book, it's a great press. And New Press is one of the real wonderful presses out there. Elie's, I believe, written now 2 books with New Press.
Oh yeah, so I say there. I really believe in the mission of the press. It allows a lot of social justice books that maybe wouldn't have gotten written to be written. I was very happy that my first book went bestseller, and so you know when you go bestseller, you've got more options.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why I stayed with the New Press, is that not only do I genuinely like the people, I believe in their mission and the idea that like my little book can like help other people's important books get published. Like that is worth a lot to me. And so this book actually went bestseller first week, which I am very thankful for. But I'm also very thankful for the New Press for it because I feel like this is something that I can do to help the mission. And I'm just a huge fan of the publisher.
Same thing. I mean, my book, except for Palestine, is on New Press, and I'm at a moment where a lot of presses didn't take the risk to put out a book like that. You know, now it wouldn't be as much of a risk, but at the time it was. Mm-hmm. And to be with a group of people like you, like Michelle Alexander, you know, I mean, it's such an extraordinary place to be. In office hours, we nerd out a little bit on the meta level too. So y'all check out New Press books in general. You know, these are great books. Presses matter, the lists matter. And if you understand how hard it is to do a book critiquing the law and having a progressive vision and have it make a bestseller list, I mean, that's no small thing. And that's a testament to the press and to the writer, the author, and to, you know, I think it's a reminder of where we are at this moment. I think people want something different. And I'm excited to see you actually giving people that different thing. Anyway, thank you, my brother. I know it's late. I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful for you. I read half the book. I'm going to read the other half tomorrow at the mechanic. So I'll have plenty of time to read. But everybody, just check out this book. It's a wonderful book, and we want to make it a bestseller 2 weeks in a row. We don't want these one-offs. We want it to hit every single place possible. We want this book to stretch far and wide because people need to read smart things. And also we want to continue to keep a market open for smart things. So I'll just say that. And Elie, again, thank you for joining us. Love you. Appreciate you. Hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great week and good luck with your car.
Thank you. All right, family, that's it for office hours. We will see you again next Sunday. We got a bunch of office hours lined up that are all straight fire. So make sure you come here every Sunday for office hours. In the meantime, family, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you're so inclined, hit the join button and become part of the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel by becoming a paid member. Your financial support gives us the stability we need and are humbly requesting in order to do the work that we do. It helps us pay bills, it helps us pay staff, it helps us get the content out, and it helps us diversify the content. So please consider joining. But if you can't join, consider making a one-time payment right now. Consider it like tuition for the month. You can go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle and drop something in. No amount is too big, no amount is too small. If you give $1, we're grateful. If you give $1 million, we're grateful. Anything in the middle, we're grateful for. But we're asking right now, if everybody watching right now could drop a minimum of $5, just $5. Everybody watching right now could drop $5 on Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. We'd be able to meet our financial goals for the month. So just consider it. But again, no amount's too small, no amount's too big. We're just grateful to have you here. Beyond the money, just hit the like button, like the content, hit the subscribe button, subscribe to the content, also share the content. But most importantly, study the content, because that is what night school and office hours are all about. See you soon, family. Peace.